Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to the Maryland Maverick. My name is Colin McEvers. I have a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about this recent article that was released by the Baltimore Sun. It's a commentary, a staff commentary, and it is titled 2026 is a make or break year for the Maryland GOP. And so there are a lot of recommendations and issues that are addressed in regards to Maryland politics, the political climate, the party dynamics, the structure, and it provides an analysis of certain things that are going on, how Republicans can improve and be more energetic, and the things that are relevant to this upcoming 2026 election. It's going to be a very critical year, that's for sure. It's going to be very, very important that we make some gains, we retain our seats, that we are going as hard as we possibly can against these Democrats, and particularly in the purple areas, in the purple districts, in the localities and places that are up for grabs, that are in far, very, very deep blue or deep red, that we do campaign as hard as possible, that we do knock on a lot of doors. It is going to be a critical election, but let's go into the article and some of the recommendations that were given to the Maryland GOP, and I'll provide my own commentary on this commentary. So it'll be a commentary of a commentary. The only difference is that this one is video form, and the one that I'm going off of is an article that was written by a staff member for the Baltimore Sun. So the first recommendation that's provided is that the Maryland GOP must align themselves on issues that voters care about, not upon the issues which a vocal partisan base cares about. Now, I suppose that would mean things along the lines of vote. For instance, first thing I'm thinking about is voter fraud, something that a large majority of Republicans in Maryland really, really care about, but that voters in general in Maryland might not possibly. I think that this particular recommendation isn't very convincing or very strong, honestly, because it depends upon what voters we're talking about. If we're talking about 6 million voters in the state of Maryland or something, or let's say 4 million people are registered, I believe, in the state to vote, maybe a little bit less than that. I don't know. I don't have the particular numbers on me, but let's say voters, and we're just talking about millions and millions of people. Then sure, I guess, 2/3 of the registered voters are Democrats, but in these districts and in these particular areas, if we focus upon issues that are relevant to a large percentage of the people who are going to be voting, particularly in red areas, of course, that's a given, but also purple areas as well, places that are going to be contested. The issues that a vocal partisan base might care about may very well also be things that regular voters in their homes care about. It just needs to be framed in a proper way. We need to define the narrative correctly. We need to have good strategy in regards to how we talk about it, how we address it, and how we reach the people, and really making sure that they know that we are with them and that we're fighting for them. It's just a matter of communication. And that's actually one of the next things that this article recommends, is in regards to public communications. And I do strongly agree with this particular aspect of it. And that is to reevaluate public profile, train party operatives in public communication strategies so that they can create engaging narratives and compelling arguments before a crowd, coach operatives to be effective, relevant communicators who can build a sense of personal investment in the future of the state. I totally agree with that. That's something that I'm trying to do in my capacity as chairman of the Maryland College Republicans. I always talk to my people and to my fellow soldiers about this, that we need to define the narrative. We need to go on the news and we need to talk about issues in a way that Maryland voters in these different districts and these different communities understand and care about. We need to be radical. We need to be very radical, but we need to be strategically radical, meaning that we take the radical changes that we want to enact in the state of Maryland, whether it be in regards to immigration or the economy or whatever it might be, and we have to frame it in a way that appeals to people, in which people understand. whether they be independent, Republican. A lot of Democrats really, I mean, a lot of them actually will just vote along party lines and are unreachable. So let me just say weak Democrats. Weak Democrats, independents, and Republicans who need to get out to vote. Because if we can frame it in a way, and we need to be very partisan actually when we're appealing to the Republican voters, because if we are not very energetic or entertaining or informative, and if we are just moderate and kind of moderate ourselves and are boring, then a lot of those Republican voters won't even go out to vote, and then we will lose. Because Democrats are very good in Maryland at getting out the vote. I saw that in the Annapolis election. They had such a high rate of voter turnout among themselves, among Democrats. And that ultimately crippled all the Republican and right-leaning independent candidates in the Annapolis election. It was an unfortunate time. It was very sad, but they got a lot of people to come out to vote, and we were not able to, unfortunately, whether it be from a combination of not knocking enough doors or national political trends, among other things. But we need to understand who we're communicating to. That's obvious. We have different audiences. If we're talking to a Republican base, we need to be very vocal. We need to disregard this notion that's talked about in the article that we need to align ourselves on issues that voters care about, and not the issues like the vocal partisan base cares about. We need to align ourselves on the issues that a vocal partisan base is talking about for the Republican voters to get them out to vote. Because if we don't have good voter turnout, then we're screwed, and we're totally going to be destroyed, which we don't want, of course. So definitely in regards to public communication strategies, we need to be as effective as possible, because the Democrats do it well. They have a lot of money too. They have a lot more money than us. So we really need to compete with them in the sphere of public communications and marketing and outreach. So I agree with the article in that particular realm. It also recommends that we identify unhealthy patterns and take a pass on headline farming, which national right-wing figures promulgate. And headline farming is like you see something really big and really kind of catchy and juicy, maybe like, Somalian immigrants or something like that in Minneapolis taking over the government there. And so Republican leaders in Maryland then take that story and we just talk about it nonstop to voters who this article claims might not necessarily care and then might not go out and vote for us. I can see the thought behind this in not using every single national story that aligns with our values as conservatives and as MAGA Republicans, and then just taking those stories and using them in the state sphere and having that not necessarily appeal to a large swath of the voters that we need to win over. However, what I'll also say is that some of these stories, like the Somalian takeover of the entire Minneapolis government and Minnesota at large, that those things actually are relevant to places like Maryland, because we are a blue state and we are seeing major demographic shifts and changes. We just need to be more, moderate on how we present the issues to the Maryland voter base if we're trying to win a statewide election like the governorship or a state delegate or state Senate seat where there are a lot of Democratic voters or weak Democrats that we need to win over and independents. We need to take those stories and those facts and those things that will definitely, without a doubt, affect Maryland in the long term, in the future, in the next couple years, and make it pertinent and relevant to Maryland citizens. So I do think we need to do that. I don't think we should totally avoid headlines that are affecting that are really catchy and are really sensational at the national level. We just need to take those things, because we are part of the same party. The Maryland Republican Party cannot go out and become independent from the national GOP. That would be silly and ludicrous. I mean, we need to consider, local leaders, party leaders, in my opinion, myself included, and many of my fellow college Republican leaders and young Republican colleagues, take the national headlines, think about it, think about how it would best be relayed to a Maryland audience or to whoever we're trying to get to vote in a particular election in order to win, because winning is the key. Winning is the end game. We need to win, otherwise we'll be destroyed. And we need to funnel those stories and those headlines and those particular issues, be strategic about it, and use it to win over voters. So we shouldn't avoid those big, catchy, flashy stories. We need to understand them, and we need to incorporate them into our own public communication strategies, just in a way which doesn't alienate a bunch of voters or turn them off, but in a way which gets them out to the polls, gets them out voting, and gets them to think and reconsider what the Maryland Republican Party is actually trying to do for them in their homes and in their communities. It also suggests that we stop holding a grudge on Hogan. A united Republican front is imperative to move forward with success. Now, I have mixed feelings on Larry Hogan. I even campaigned for his senatorial run back in 2024. But, I thought a lot about Hogan. He had a great economy, much better than Wes Moore, definitely. That's for sure. But at the end of the day, he was very, very moderate, and he did align himself with the Democrats in many cases. And he did align himself with the liberal worldview. He kind of countersignaled Trump excessively during his first administration. In many cases where he did not need to do that, it was not necessary, but he decided to do it. He made many mistakes during his administration, and for a Republican, for someone who was representing conservative values. For instance, he was one of the first governors to enact major COVID shutdowns of businesses, schools, and more for a very long and extended period of time. And this greatly afflicted the economy, of course, and children and adolescents who were developing. They weren't able to go to school. They weren't able to, talk with their friends, socialize, learn, including myself. I was in high school at the time. I was stuck at home for a year and a half. Online education is really not that great. Not able to talk to friends, not able to go out, shut up in our homes, isolation. It's terrible for a person's mental health and for their development as a person. A lot of people experience great social anxiety and depression. People are more lonely. A lot of people don't have developed social skills. They rely on AI and Google and the internet for literally everything, for their critical thinking, for assignments and things of that sort. And a big part of it is because of the excessive COVID shutdowns, which Larry Hogan was responsible for. Unfortunately, in the state of Maryland, I know a lot of governors did it, but he was a big proponent of it and did it very massively. And that was a big failure. Additionally, he advocated for pro-business, and they were pro-corporation, pro-corporate H-2B visas so that foreign workers could be transported in and basically replace Americans in the different jobs in different sectors. So he was a proponent of bringing in a bunch of migrants and foreigners. And this is like a classic kind of Reaganite Republican kind of thing. A free market, free trade, kind of just bring in foreign labor to replace American workers. And that's a terrible thing too. We can't have that in the Republican Party anymore. Okay, we cannot just blow over and disregard the failures of the Hogan administration. We need to understand that if we do win a major race, a major state race like the governorship, different localities, different counties, whatever it might be, different governments, when we gain power, we cannot be moderate. We cannot allow for our state leaders, for our Republican leaders, to do things that are not in our best interest and that are basically being supported by the Democrats and liberals. We cannot have that, because otherwise there's no reason to even have a Republican leader if they're not acting in our best interest. And that's exactly the problem here too. He was also, and I think this is important to state, he was the only Republican governor to pull back Maryland National Guard troops from the border during the first Trump administration for the family separation policy, which was zero tolerance for illegal immigration. It basically separated families, took children, put them in facilities, took parents, put them in jail for breaking the laws of this country and coming in illegally. And he came out, he marched out to the pulpit, to the stump, and he said that basically it was wrong and immoral and terrible for the federal government, for the government in general, for our country to separate families. It was sad, it was awful. We shouldn't be doing it. It's a bad thing. We can't be separating these families. The children didn't do anything wrong. Okay, buddy, seriously, get out of here. I mean, the thing is that we cannot tolerate, there should be zero tolerance, absolutely no tolerance for breaking the laws of the country. I don't care if you have a prop child, and that's exactly what a lot of these children were. Oh, sorry, sir, I have my child here. Do not deport me. And people like Biden and Democratic leaders and Democratic governors, sanctuary state people would be like, okay, sure, okay, just come in. You have an anchor baby, you have a prop child. Okay, Hernando. Okay, come over here. Come on our cuadro. Come over and set up shop in our country. Use up social resources and services that American citizens should be entitled to, and come in because you have a child or you have a family. I don't care if someone has a family or has children or whatever. The family should be separated, frankly, for a little bit, and then they can be deported back to home, back to Mexico or El Salvador or whatever. They'll be separated for a little bit and then sent back. But Hogan did not believe this. Hogan was a proponent of allowing illegals to break the laws of our country just because they had children, just because they were a family. Total BS, a total BS excuse. And he supported that. And he was one of the only Republican governors, I think the only Republican governors, to bring back Maryland National Guardsmen from the border to protest that national action. He constantly countersignaled the America First policies of the Trump administration, of the first Trump administration. And so we cannot forget those things. We cannot forget that treason, that betrayal. We absolutely cannot forget it. Now, we can forgive Larry Hogan for his difficulties and for his moderate sentimentalities and his ways of acting. We can forgive that. And we can appreciate and respect the fact that he was one of the only Republicans, he's the only Republican in the past couple centuries to win 2 terms as a Republican governor of Maryland. I think he was the only Republican to do that. And he presided over a great economy. He represented conservative, fiscal conservatism in the state, which was very, very important. But there were a lot of social issues which he totally failed upon. We cannot solely, as Republicans in Maryland, focus on economic issues. Of course, it's important, and one of the things in the article that it recommends is that we address and we do research on all of the negative effects that are coming as a result of Westmore's fee increases, tax increases, the deficit, all these things, and we transform those issues and that data into valid, convincing, and compelling talking points for the narrative, for winning people to our side. And I totally agree with that. I totally agree with it. It's very, very important. But at the same time, if we have a great economy and we can live in a house or whatever, yet we have to live in a community, in a neighborhood that does not speak our language, that does not believe the same things that we believe, that basically does not share the same kind of values that we share, and does not appreciate the culture and the history and the heritage of the United States of America. And we have to send our children to schools where they are a super minority and no one in their classroom speaks their language or looks like them. That is total BS. And it does not matter if we have a great economy, if we have a great GDP, if we have all these tangible benefits. If our communities are totally transformed and altered in a way where it doesn't even look like America, where it looks like some kind of third world country, then the economy doesn't mean shit, actually. It doesn't mean anything. The economy is important, but it is not sufficient to having and living in a great country, to living in America. So we need to make sure that we have leaders who represent our interests, who agree and address the fact that we have mass migration, that we have all these people coming into the country unvetted, that we have a sanctuary state. We need leaders who are strategically and rationally radical. Maybe they can't be like that on the out front. They can't portray it or express it fully, but they need to internally, and we need to understand that they have a radical agenda to make Maryland great, to put Maryland citizens first, to address the problems, that the major issues that are being affected, that are being happening in Maryland. We now have a Speaker of the House of Delegates, this Afro-Latina lady, who is a big proponent of reparations, who believes in trans health equity for children. She's just a terrible person. She's the worst person that could possibly be in that position. And we had our minority leader, Jason Buckle, if I'm not mistaken, basically praising her and saying, "Oh, she's a very diligent. She's a very diligent worker and stuff like that." It's total BS. I mean, no. These people are trying to destroy our country. They're trying to destroy our state. Currently, Pena Malinka, Arigato, whatever, I don't know. She's currently reforming and reshaping all these commissions, putting in a bunch of minorities and DEI hires and all these committee chair positions. And we have a lot of Republicans in the state who are just like, "Oh, wonderful, awesome, yeah, you're like, oh yeah, you're a respectable woman, you're a respectable Afro-Latina woman who just happens to want to enact reparations on all white people and stuff like that." I mean, it's terrible, and we're going to be discriminated against as a people, and as Marylanders, as Americans. We need to fight for this country. We need to fight for the values of the United States and for Maryland's history. And so, yeah, I mean, we just need Republican leaders who are able to address these points of concern and these big issues. So, although I agree with some of the tactical suggestions that are outlined and kind of given to us and delivered in this piece, in this commentary, I also am going to say right here that we cannot forget the moderate policies and the left-leaning kind of liberal-aligned initiatives and agenda items which some of our Republican leaders have promoted. Because if a Republican leader who we elect is basically like a Republican in name only, then we might as well have elected a Democrat. There's no reason in having Republican leadership if they align with liberals on many different issues, particularly social issues. It's not just about the economy. It's not just the economy. It's also about our country, intangible things that we can't necessarily measure, things that we can measure too. Demographic changes, religious affiliation. I don't want to live in a state where it's going to be like New York City, where the mayor is a Muslim who's being sworn in with the Toran. Okay, we cannot have that. We cannot have that at all, and that's exactly the direction we're headed in. And we need to address these problems. We need to work on the public communication. Sure, we need to make sure that all of our party leaders and our operatives and our generals on the ground are as efficient and capable and competent as possible. But we also can't sell out our values. We need to be strong and we need to be solidified in our values as conservatives, as Republicans. We can't be Griffith's conservatives where we just let the Democrats walk all over us and destroy our state and let in a flood of illegal immigrants, where we make excuses for Somalian scams and daycare centers and such. I saw some conservative influencer actually a couple days ago in Maryland, conservative, quote unquote, saying that basically it was all BS. It's not. I mean, there's fraudulent activity going on there, and it's terrible. And any attempt to make excuses for it is pretty pathetic. We need to have a strong front. We need to be unified. We need to have clear messaging. I do agree with that. We have 11 months until, actually, no. We have 10 months until the election. So we need to get in gear. I'm going to be doing a lot of work. But again, we just need to make sure that we have strong values, that we do not sell out our values to appeal to voter bases. We just need to find a way, an effective way, to take the issues and the things that we care about most and to translate them in a manner that appeals to voters that we need to win over. And even if it's only by like 5 votes or 10 votes, I don't care. However many we need to win, that's all I care about. Winning elections, and then the people that we elect following through on implementing conservative values and implementing Republican principles, the ones that we, the voters, care about. So that's my review of the commentary piece. I hope you all have a great night. Happy New Year again. It's going to be a great year, and I hope you all have a great night again. Bye.